So, showing me shaking my head and my negative attitude feel after that Buffalo game where they all I can tell you is
Dolphins #1, baby!
Things up, baby.
Dolphins
Things up.
#1!
I swear, if a certain quarterback is mentioned in the comments, got my beers ready. I'm gonna crack it open.
Or is it a Serbian kid?
Serbian kid,
This looks done. Oh my god, it looks fantastic.
I hate you so much.
no, you beat man. Not a beat man.
Woo! I'm the man. I said it, and it's reality. All right,
Congratulations.
Good evening, Miami. Good evening, basketball fans from all over the world. You're watching Fast Break, our trade deadline special. Typically, see us on a Wednesday. We pushed it back a day. Thankful to my grateful components. I always ask Mr. Clutch, my right-hand man, the voice of no trade season. How you doing, buddy?
Very sad.
Okay.
Very depressed.
I can
What's
see it
up,
in your
everybody?
picture. I can see it in your picture, man. And my man from the West Coast, Justin Garfield. How you doing, bud?
I'm doing pretty great. Pretty great to you
today. And I'll get right to you. Obviously, we're a local show here in Miami, so we have been following the Heat since the offseason. We talked about certain moves that we expected, certain situations. I'll be the logical fan, not the homer. I'll be the logical fan, but I'll let Clutch express his inner sadness, and then we'll tackle, obviously, trades that came up. Which honestly was one of the most exciting trade seasons, trade deadlines. And you figured it was that because after 12 o'clock, everything just started going nonstop. So, Clutch, overall perspective from a local Miami, not crazy, a local Miami Heat fan.
Is there a difference?
On today? Again, not today. Not today. But how do you feel?
As a Heat fan,
yes,
I think let me get the good stuff out the way first, because after that there's nothing good. But let me get the good stuff out the way first. Deadman's no longer on the roster.
Okay.
So that's good.
That takes silence and applause. We did this.
We had to give up a pick for that, but
not 5, just 1.
Just one before everybody started valuing second round picks like giving away like their Skittles.
We'll talk about that later too, because I didn't grasp that.
So we gave up a pick. It's a 2028 pick. I mean, long term, we're talking about a kid in middle school right now. So I'm not so worried about it, but we got rid of Deadman. Mm-hmm. That's good. And you saw how like we opened up 2 roster spots with that move. We got $5 million under the luxury tax line, and we're like, okay, so that probably means a move is coming, right? And just never came. It just never came, and it's you would have thought that Pat Riley and company would have made
and we got a trade exception.
You would have thought Pat Riley and company would have made some sort of move to get better, considering how the season's gone up and down so far. I don't know if it was just didn't have the assets to get something done. It was Duncan and Lowry getting hurt at the wrong time. I don't know what it was, but Miami obviously didn't do anything in one of the busiest trade deadlines in history. And as a Heat fan,
a combination of those things, exactly.
As a Heat fan, it's just disappointing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Did we lose Clutch? Or lost me? Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
You can hear me? Oh man, I think we lost Clutch. Clutchy.
Uh-oh.
Wait, am I here?
Oh boy. Yep.
There he
Now
is.
you're back. Now you're
Okay.
back. I'm like, damn, how depressed is he, bro? He's now we
What-
just lost him. Lost his voice.
So
That's all we
depressed,
have.
my internet,
That's all
my
we
internet's
have.
acting up. My
Your
internet's
is
depressed.
too. But go ahead. We you left us off at a combination of things, and you thought that we're gonna make some moves.
Oh yeah, but I mean, I basically closed it out there. I was like, so it's pretty
Okay.
much it's disappointing considering what everybody else was doing, and we just didn't do anything.
And we just
Anything of note.
And I'm gonna touch upon that a little bit later on the show, so we can get the full Heat reaction. But I do want to go, Justin, to you. Arguably, I think obviously the Suns made the splash in acquiring Kevin Durant, an overnight acquisition when no one saw coming. You always figured they were going to be working due diligence, as all teams were, based on Kyrie Irving being traded. So most likely, especially the whole situation in the offseason, Kevin Durant might request a trade. It never became public. You could tell that was his preferred destination because they had all the assets. I'm pretty sure it could have been the same framework that they had in the offseason. So they just retouched upon it. But obviously it was worked in secrecy. It was worked overnight. The trade was executed. He was traded. They worked with Kevin Durant. So you got to grant them that to the Nets organization. They did acquire young pieces and 4 first-round picks. So they did get – you're never going to get a fair package back for Kevin Durant, even at this stage of his career. But they got a decent return. I'm not going to lie. Mikal Bridges, and Cam Johnson are solid rotational players that you can build around young stars. So we'll give them that in that return. But the other news to me, what Rob Pelinka has done, and I've criticized Rob Pelinka for a while now, especially the whole Westbrook trade. What he has done, I don't know if he has any information on Danny Ainge that he threatened to make public, but what he acquired from Utah alone for Russell Westbrook and just 1 first-round pick was magical. So how are your reactions? What have you seen, for example, from your friends? How is the reaction in LA? Because not only did he acquire help for LA, but he got considerably younger and players that he can control or re-sign in the given case that LeBron obviously retires or leaves in a few years and possibly build around Anthony Davis. So how does the feeling over there in LA?
If you're a Laker fan today, you're feeling ecstatic. The team that was on the court when LeBron broke that scoring record, by the way, we got to talk about that later in the show.
Yes.
If you watch that game, you saw Westbrook single-handedly ruin that game, I will argue. You saw him making boneheaded passes, missing brick after brick after brick, and you could just tell this team was not going anywhere. This is a game they needed to win to get into the play-in tournament.
Yes.
They're just above San Antonio for third bottom in the West. And this is supposed to be a team that LeBron wants to win a championship with. I think Rob Pelinka is seeing that, finally got the message through his head, saying we're not good enough. LeBron's here to win. This is a privilege to have this man in our franchise. So we need to do by him and do what's best. Let's see what we can do. And I got to give it to him. I've criticized Rob Pelinka since day one of getting hired, really the whole Lakers organization since 2013. Mm-hmm. But they did amazing work here. I've got to give them props.
And I still don't know how he was able to acquire even a D'Angelo Russell. Out of all these players that he acquired, Vanderbilt, Malik Beasley, Russell, obviously they're not superstars, but they're the perfect complementary players. And in reality, he only had to give up 1 first-round pick, so he still has the 2029 pick that he can use this offseason to make
and
another
Mo Bamba in a separate trade
move and attach it. And Mo Bamba in a separate trade. So he basically restructured the Lakers' move. Out of all the teams that needed to make a move to stay competitive, obviously LA was in the top tier because, like you said, the roster construction was basically just LeBron James carrying it. This season, I figured if that roster remained intact, it was just what we witnessed, LeBron James becoming the all-time points leader in the NBA, all-time leading scorer. That, which was something phenomenal. I've watched it. I don't know if I know you stayed up, Justin, to watch it. Clutch, I don't know if you watched it. For me, it was full circle. You watched it? I watched LeBron's first game against Sacramento. I was 16 years old when he came to the league. I was astonished then. I thought we were in the fight. The Heat were in the fight in the lottery that year. So we all had a chance to get LeBron, but we figured it was going to go to Cleveland, and obviously ends up going to Cleveland. So seeing all that, and in living color, even with Steph Curry, it also becomes it's almost a sense of disbelief that you actually saw two generational players in your time break the record, first of all, for most three-pointers made in a career, and now the all-time leading scorer in NBA history. And you saw them develop, which was a neat treat for everybody. I tell my players also on the team, like, there's greatness there, and that's very few and far in between. And realistically, I personally believe that LeBron James' scoring record is not going to be touched. By the time he retires, he can be above 42,000 points. I don't think anybody's going to get close to that unless they come up with a 4-point line. But I don't see an athlete reaching 20 years, maybe in 30, 40, 50 years again, but who knows? Staying in the trade deadline before we go back to Miami. Kevin Durant acquisition by the Suns is your full go-to move. He's under contract for the next 4 years. They have your nucleus with Devin Booker, DeAndre Ayton. That is your nucleus. Perfect. You're going to go for it. Arguably one of the most balanced teams. Chris Paul is up in age. He might be traded in a year or two if he starts to decline. He's replaceable in that aspect, especially when his contract is expiring. Now, what you do is, who do they have on their bench? They acquired TJ Warren, so now you got depth. Durant, obviously, since his Achilles injury, he hasn't played more than 60 games, I believe, in a season. So there's that regard. Clutch, do you see anything that could derail? And the West, what the West has done, now all of a sudden the West is once again, we talked about parity in the league. The top 8 teams in the West are solid. And it's going to be a battle, a dogfight until the very end. Do you see a situation where Phoenix, due to the lack of depth, since they just traded their young pieces, is that going to affect them in the long run? Obviously, buyout candidates are going to go over there. Reggie Jackson is going to get a buyout. He might go over there. John Wall is another option. And we'll go through the buyout market a little bit because that's what the trade season is, buyout market now. So there's always going to gravitate towards franchises that are closer to a championship. Brand new owner, the owner basically on the first day on the job, he makes a splash. So now it's an owner that wants to continue that winning tradition. Well, start a winning tradition, really. It's a new phase. What do you see long term? Is this sustainable, even at Kevin Durant's age, at Chris Paul's age? Because you're fine with Booker, you're fine with Aiden. Is this a winning formula for multiple years?
It's probably as much of a winning formula as it was for Miami back in the Big Three era. I mean,
you think so?
I think it will be. I think it's different from the Brooklyn Kevin Durant, Kyrie Harden thing.
Oh yeah.
I feel it's better structured.
Okay.
They got a better coach, a better GM. Shout out
Yes.
to James Jones, Heat culture.
Absolutely.
I think it's more sustainable. I think it's Big Three-ish in the sense that it's going to be a very attractive place for players that usually will ask for 10, 11 million to take 5 million to play with them. A very attractive place for the buyout market, like you said. Terrence Ross, guys like that are being planned to be bought out. I think it was Terrence Ross, Will Barton, etc.
Yes, which I love. I have them written down here.
I was going to say, Will Barton in Miami sounds great.
I love Will Barton. Danny Green also is going to get bought out probably by Houston.
Danny Green.
And talk to me about John Wall getting traded back to Houston. Houston's about to buy him out twice in 2 years.
Yep.
When I saw that, I thought it was a joke, man. I'm like, there's no way they acquired John Wall.
And John Wall recently had an interview where he basically bashed the entire Rockets organization.
He trashed them, bro.
And he gets sent right back.
Hey guys, what's up?
At that point, does he even talk to them, or he just lets his agent handle the buyout?
That's not his agent. But dude, even now that you say the concept of the buyout, to me is such a cool. I mean, I understand the legalities and the terms, and obviously you're going to go through wires, waiver wire, and the team could pick up the remaining balance of your contract. But essentially, the concept of you're getting paid to not play. Like imagine right now, Justin, or Clutch, in your job. Like, hey, Justin, we're going to buy out your contract. We're going to pay you, what are you going to do? Sacrifice a little bit? Yeah, I'll sacrifice a portion of my salary, 20%. We're going to pay you to not play anymore, to not work. I like the concept of buying out. To me, is so funny because I see it as the way of the NFL when they just restructure deals, because that's what it is. It's going to be on your books, but you're just buying them out for the year. And I'm surprised. I'm surprised that still San Antonio. Did San Antonio acquire more salary? Oh yeah, Devontae Graham. They acquired him from the Pelicans because San Antonio was a dumping ground for contracts. That's where we were able to trade Denman to them, and Denman got released, so he's done too. And it's just you mentioned the buyout, and I'll throw it out there, and I'll keep it in house for the Heat. We've talked about obviously we believe Russell Westbrook's going to get bought out by the Jazz. We talked about John Wall, Reggie Jackson, Will Barton. I know they threw out Serge Ibaka. I don't want Serge Ibaka. I really don't, especially now that Omer is coming back and we're possibly going to sign Orlando Robinson. Well, not possibly. We're going to switch Orlando Robinson to a standard contract. That's just a formality at this point. Clutch, I'll stay with you. Out of all those, what makes the most sense to you? Remember, keeping in mind, we don't know the extent of Lowry's injury, which I don't know up to what point it was self-sabotage by his agents and Lowry. I'm throwing it out there. All of a sudden, trade season comes along. He states that he wants to stay here. The report comes out that we are entertaining the option of trading him, that we're motivated to trade him. All of a sudden, he's out 3 games, knee injury. It might extended absence as well. Out of all that, realistically, looking at our roster, out of all the names that we've mentioned or any other possible buyout, which one is the best option to you for this season?
I mean, I would have easily said a power forward.
Yeah.
Or a big wing.
Uh-huh.
But, I mean...
Do you think Olynyk gets bought out?
Huh?
Do you think Olynyk gets bought out by Utah?
No.
No, right? They're just going to keep him this year.
I think a surprise buyout might be Kevin Love.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
And I would not be against Kevin Love in Miami.
Oh, no. Now,
I think he still rebounds well. He stretches the floor.
Yeah. You can slide him right next to Bam right now.
Uh-huh.
You can slide him right next to Bam.
I would have easily said a power forward, but then you saw the report, I think it was earlier today or yesterday, that Lowry, instead of 3 games, is now indefinite.
Indefinite, yes. Yeah.
So kind of need a point guard because it's Gabe and then there's nobody else.
Yeah, and you can't
Tyler,
exactly. You can't count on Oladipo still fully because of injury, so you do need insurance there.
Yeah, because you have Tyler, you have Oladipo, but they're not really true point guards. None of them are.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you would look into the point guard market. Reggie Jackson. I know Russell Westbrook's been connected to the Heat.
Yeah. My only fear with Westbrook is the Clippers. The Clippers might make a pull for him, and it's home. They
traded for a lot of guards though.
Who did they? Oh my God! Now that you say it, Eric Gordon was finally traded.
Eric Gordon,
almost 3 years. Remember we talked about it, Justin? Finally, he got traded.
Finally, this was the time to do it. His contract was expiring,
and for only
they got Eric Gordon and Bones Highland,
which made no sense whatsoever. By the way, that trade.
It made no sense on Denver's side because you're the number 1 seed in the West. I think they still are.
What's up, Cap?
Oh, you're trying to compete,
gentlemen. Welcome, my man. Oh, sorry, and also first and foremost, I forgot with all the excitement. You are listening to Fast Break on the Finns Talk Sports Network. So remember to like, subscribe. I have to say that if not, Bobby's going to trade me for like 3 or 4 second round picks. But yeah, when you were mentioning Bones, I was surprised by that move. I don't know if it has contract. I figured there was a lot of tendencies this trade deadline is a lot of people were capitalized on trading players or assets that they didn't want to resign next year for a certain cap number, and they acquired some second round picks in return. So that was one of the trends. But a move like that for Denver, you still have a good nucleus, but you risk of damaging certain chemistry in that second unit, so that could have some effects. But if I gave you a choice, Clutch and Justin, for example, I'm all for, I don't know if you saw the last Heat game, when Vincent starts, which is the trend that you kind of started seeing Spo. I don't know if Spo at a certain point he wrote out Lowry to kind of show the front office what was he working with, but he gradually started diminishing Lowry's role late in games. And you saw we were dreadful starting our third quarter starts. Our first starts of the game were slow. I'll give credit to Lowry, where I wasn't a huge fan of his signing. I was okay with it because I figured it fit into our window prior to injuries, prior to personal situations that we can't control. So I was okay with it. I didn't champion it, but I do believe he had a positive effect in getting Bam Adebayo to identify his spots, getting Bam Adebayo to be secure where he can get the ball, remove the ball, where Bam Adebayo now does that himself. He doesn't need someone to guide him. So I'll give him credit for that in that regards. But the situation now with Lowry this year, you're faced with Vincent starting. The starting lineup is much more free when Vincent starts because Hero, Butler, Bam, they're all playing to their strengths. Gabe is not a ball dominant point guard. He could just spot up and shoot. He's a defensive menace, which was the thing with Kyle Lowry. Offensively, he wasn't giving you much, but you started seeing the decline defensively. So in the low post, he was fine, but guarding fast-paced point guards, it was very difficult for him to keep up. And then you have Tyler Hero next to him. That's a horrible defensive backcourt. So now, Clutch, I'll keep it with you and I'll throw it to Justin. If you have to pick between the point guard of like a Russell Westbrook, a John Wall, a Reggie Jackson, if they're all available, which they might not be, who do you go with?
I think regardless of whoever I go with, Gabe Vincent is going to be the starting point guard.
Absolutely.
So in the bench role,
yes,
and I have to like put the big emphasis on bench role because I was here on this very show saying how against I was for this move. But on the bench role, Russell Westbrook.
Okay.
is he fit? I think his athleticism that he still kind of has.
Yes.
Next to Oladipo, who can play defense, who hasn't fallen off on defense at all. I think it would be a solid backcourt with the second unit. I think I like Westbrook the best out of the three I can think of is Reggie Jackson, John Wall, and Russell Westbrook.
And Russell Westbrook, that's in the point guard situation. And one of the pluses is Westbrook played with Oladipo in OKC, and they flourished together, and they had great chemistry when they played over there. I believe Oladipo spent a year or two in OKC only. And obviously there's other options in Will Barton, Terrence Ross. Justin, I'll go to you. You have those options. You can tell me if you want to go point guard or if you're comfortable having Oladipo running the point and creating more of like a 2-guard, maybe 3-guard, like a Will Barton or Terrence Ross. Who would you go with? If ideally we have 2 roster spots, you're going to give one spot to Orlando Robinson. Who's your second option there?
I'll go with, you mentioned before, Danny Green was a great option. He could come off the bench and be a great wing 3-and-D shooter. But I think of those 3 that you gave, I'd probably go with Reggie Jackson. He's the best offensive weapon at this point in his career, I'd say. Westbrook's IQ is just not there. I'm kind of off the books on him at this point. I don't think he'd be good for that locker room too, unless Pat Riley can really get through to him. But he's also got a huge ego, and he doesn't want to change for anybody. So that's what worries me about Russ. Reggie Jackson, on the other hand, has proven that he's a shooter. He can handle the ball. He can make the right decision, take the right shots. He got the Clippers to the 3rd round of the playoffs for the first time in history. So keep that in mind too. I think Reggie Jackson's the guy.
Here's another option. I just remembered off the top of my head, and I'll champion this option just for the chaos. Patrick Beverley.
Originally picked by the Miami Heat.
Yes, we signed him as and you know what pisses me off? We signed him as an undrafted free agent, and we released him basically to complement LeBron. That was in the Big 3 era. We were developing that year, and we just released him. And so that's incredible, man. How that happens. He was so happy to play with D'Angelo Russell again, and then all of a sudden, which was an amazing trade for Mo Bamba because it's a win-win for them. You know, they got lesser in the tax, so you kind of saw some trends with some teams doing that. And another one that stunned me was the Warriors trading Wiseman. I know it's a monetary move, but I was surprised that they traded Wiseman because I don't really see the plan for the Warriors. I know Kuminga's there, Jordan Poole. They had to trade 5 second-round picks to reacquire Gary Payton II. So those are things to me that it seems to be that a lot of teams actually made the same certain mistakes, just like the Heat did. Obviously, we didn't correct anything this in season. So that's why we're gonna get some backfire. And I'll try to get some level playing field for the front office in a little bit. But I'll let you finish, Clutch. Which was the one you were gonna say?
Yeah, I was just saying, could you imagine the chaos of Jimmy Butler and Patrick Beverly on the same team?
I think it'll be perfect. I really would. Supposedly, I believe he's going to Minnesota. That was a rumor that once he gets bought out by Orlando, he will go on to Minnesota because I believe they do need a backup point guard. But
I could see that.
ideally, it's crazy to me because of the market. There was very few teams that we had a market for Lowry. Once again, I don't want to talk shit because I don't know, but it's all too coincidental that come trade deadline, all of a sudden the injuries start piling up, and we saw that he played fine. I don't know if it was an injury that he wasn't. There was an excuse absence last game, so from in-house you can tell the turmoil. And for the Heat, one of the things I was telling, and when I was talking to Bobby on Friday, and the 10th Street Boys, that came up, and the Heat don't leak information for the most part. Whatever report comes out on the Heat, based on who it comes out with, either Barry Jackson or Ethan Skolnick, those are reliable sources. So the Heat only release the information they want to release. When they didn't shoot it down, when they didn't come out flatly and say, no, we're not going to trade Lowry like they did when his name started coming up, him going to Brooklyn, if we were going to move for Kyrie Irving or for Kevin Durant, they shut that down real quick. When the Tyler Hero name came up with James Harden, they shut it down real quick. You can tell that they were knee deep into it, and I don't know up to what point. Obviously, the contracts are not movable on their own. You saw what they were asking for Duncan Robinson, 2 first-round picks just to absorb his contract. If Duncan Robinson is playing, is Kyle Lowry is producing, those contracts are movable, which I'm going to play devil's advocate here. I love the concept. One of my passions is building teams based on the matchups, based on the cohesiveness of the units. Logically, you saw the worth that Westbrook contracts had this year as an expiring deal. I'm okay that we didn't make a move just to make a move because we were going to overpay for whoever we acquired. And then I asked myself, are they going to make a difference this year, really? Unless it was if you're going to acquire OG, Siakam, if you were going to acquire John Collins, maybe. But then you're committing, for example, John Collins, you're committing to that contract. Here, you still have flexibility and openness. And I'm not saying it's going to be a huge difference, but Omer is coming back. So you're going to have a structure team-wise where you have Orlando Robinson healthy, Omer coming back healthy. You're going to, I presumably believe that no matter what, Lowry stays on the team or Lowry's injured and misses a year, Gabe Vincent is going to be your new starter at the point guard permanently, no matter who we acquire. That opens up many concepts. And ideally, one of my goals this season was to keep Jovic. We didn't have to trade Jovic. It could be revisited in the offseason. Is somehow finding a way for Caleb Martin to slide back into his natural role. Ideally, that is my fit. Whether it's playing Bam Moore at the 4 next to Omer, whether it's signing someone off the buyout market that can play the 4. Those are situations here or there. And Justin, I'll ask you, any surprise moves? I was actually surprised the Bulls and the Raptors didn't make a move. I guess the level of
The Raptors
parity
did make a move. They reacquired Yamamoto.
Exactly. Just the minimal. Okay, they acquired Jacopo back,
But that was surprising that they were buyers and not sellers.
That's the one thing, and I don't know and we were talking about this as well. I don't believe the NBA has ever had this level of parity. There's been seasons where there was no dominant 2 or 3, but right now people believe that they're in it, and realistically, there's no clear-cut favorite this year. The Bucks ended up with Jay Crowder, which we figured they would. We talked about this continuously. The Heat did try to get into it late, but they weren't going to match any assets. But I don't really fear any team. The teams get better, absolutely, but in the West, I believe the East just got a little bit weaker. We might have just jumped the Nets in the final standings unless Cam Thomas goes off and starts averaging 40 every game, which is amazing to me. They're going to build around him. But the East, I believe, got a little weaker in that regards. Boston did acquire Muscala, I believe. Atlanta did acquire Sadiq Bey. Detroit acquired a piece for the future with Wiseman. When Cunningham comes back, they have a solid nucleus as well, a young nucleus. to build upon. They didn't trade Bogdanovich. I was surprised. I really thought the Lakers were going to pull him off, man. I'm not going to lie. I really thought that they were saving that other first-round pick to acquire Bogdanovich. And I'm like, bro, Pelinka's going all in. Justin, here we go. Ryan Messi. What's up, Ryan? Thank you for listening in. How our Lakers got those deals? You see, that is the one thing. And I'll ask you, Justin, because when I saw, and Clutch, you can respond to this too, man. When I saw that he acquired Beasley, Vanderbilt, D'Angelo Russell, and he only had to give up one first-round pick, I'm like, how is this possible? Now, obviously, I understand they're not under long-term contracts, so they're not secure, so they require minimal assets. Minnesota's a cap team, so they didn't want to resign D'Angelo Russell, so you acquire a veteran point guard in Mike Conley that I believe is under contract. Is Mike Conley under contract one more year after this one, or this is the final year of his contract?
I think this is the final year. I think.
Can you check for me, Clutch?
I'll check.
Thank you, man. Because that is one thing that I understand why Phoenix is Kevin Durant, and you give up 4 first-round picks no matter his age because he's on the contract for 4 or 5 years. So you have him under control. I understand that concept. But what Rob Pelinka did with the assets that he had, he basically just moved minimal pieces that didn't fit. And
Mike Conley has another year, by the way.
Another year. Okay.
But partially guaranteed.
Okay, so that's up to the organization. Perfect. Because Minnesota's a cap team. Minnesota's not going to sign anybody outright. They have to trade or use mid-level exceptions, biannual exceptions, which ideally the Heat also have. The Heat also have cap space, but they also have biannual exception that they can use, the mid-level one, which is like 4.1. And we got a trade exception, 4.7 million. So there is some positives to the Dwayne Dedmon trade, but we'll touch upon that. But Justin, how do you think Rob Pelinka pulled this off, man? Because it doesn't feel like he really gave up anything, and the Lakers look brand new.
I think the first thing was getting off of Westbrook's contract and finally convincing some team to take it on, and Utah was that team. In the end, Westbrook's probably going to get bought out. Utah's got no use for him. They plan to tank this year, but everybody is about equal, 3 down in the West. Then you get to the San Antonios and Houstons. So naturally, they could make the play-in tournament on accident. That's not what Danny Ainge is looking to do.
No.
That's the first step. Second step is realizing that you've got a lot of young assets on your team that could be great on other teams, but just not on the Lakers right now. They're trying to win. And so part of that is you have to convince other GMs out there, hey, you could use these guys to build with. Mm-hmm. We need your guy to help go all in right now. We have a LeBron who's aging. So I think that was his mindset going into all of this, is we have to surround LeBron with the best. And so how do I use these guys as the perfect trade bait packages? Not even mention they got rid of Thomas Bryant for a few second rounds, I believe.
Yeah, and for Devon Reed, which is another UM player, another center there. Mm-hmm. And they only cost him a second rounder for that.
Right.
And now that I say second rounder, Clutch, because this is a topic that I saw it on Twitter, and to me it was so funny. I started seeing these players. The moment it all started with Jay Crowder. I see Jay Crowder gets traded for 5 second-round picks. I'm like, 5 second-round picks? I'm like, obviously, maybe I'm just judging this as a Heat. The second-round picks to me are nothing because they're non-guaranteed contracts. For us, we might as well have unrestricted free agents, which I wish we could trade as assets because we're the masterminds of UFAs. When I started seeing all this, like, the price of assets, I think is going to, this summer, believe it or not, there's going to be a restructure of that. We're kind of like recalibrating the system because Rudy Gobert broke it. And now people believe that trading these some order picks, like, oh, I'm trading you 6 first-round picks and pick swaps and this and that. And I'm like, this is insane. And you're talking about unprotected future picks where you don't know where teams are going to end up. And another situation that always it's a downfall for us. Teams and the whole league in general, they don't value our first-round picks as much because Miami is always usually in the late 20s or mid-20s. So our first-round picks don't carry the value of a Houston first-round pick, of a tanking Brooklyn team if they have to tank. So that always affects us in trade situations. But you can kind of see now where this steers, where I'm under the belief, I'm in the coach's mindset. I don't care that Kyle Lowry's making $30 million. I understand the financial ramifications of that. If he's affecting my play on the court, I won't play him this year, even if he's healthy. If I don't want to, I wouldn't. I don't think they're gonna. I don't think they're gonna go to that extent, Clutch and Justin. But I do believe there's a possibility that he can be injured and have a substantial knee injury where he misses a big portion of the season, and we go on a run. Because when he's played, we're 22-22. That's a 500 team. We play better when he's not. We are, I believe, 7-3, or yes, 7-3 when he doesn't play. The 10 games that he misses, the team looks completely different. And if he does play, if we don't acquire anybody else, which I know we're going to get some people in the buyout market, I will play Kyle off the bench where he has more on the ball. He's playing with certain shooters and Strus, maybe with Martin, but he doesn't affect the starting line because he just slows it down. But this offseason, you can see that they're going to recalibrate and possibly, obviously, exhaust all options to move Kyle Lowry, to move Duncan Robinson. Kyle Lowry is going to be an expiring deal, so his value is going to go up if we're going to take salary back in return. Do you see any situation, Clutch, that where this just breaks off? This is highly unlikely. I don't believe this is going to happen. And I even mentioned it to you guys. I don't think Lowry's going to be traded in season. I think this is an off-season move. It started picking up steams 3 days ago. So I was even surprised about it. I'm like, holy shit, they actually might do it. Obviously, it didn't work out. He's injured. Do you see any scenario where Kyle Lowry doesn't play again this year and is just written out and is traded off-season as an asset, acquired multiple contracts?
He's going to play again this year. I'm pretty sure he'll play. I do agree with what you said that Spo shouldn't be scared to bench him.
No,
because
he's already benched him in the fourth quarter. He's not playing him.
I mean, one thing about Spo is that you realize who he trusts not by who he starts, but who he finishes games with.
Always correct.
And when you started seeing Lowry only get 4 minutes in the fourth instead of 8, and then it went down to 2, and then he didn't play at all.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of figured that he's lost confidence in having him out there in the fourth quarter.
Yeah,
I think the marriage is broken.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's enough for him not to play at all.
Uh-huh.
I think he'll be back. He'll play. I don't know how well or how bad. But I think he'll play. But I don't think he plays. He's not wearing a Heat jersey next year for sure.
No.
I mean, it'd be a disaster if he does.
And one thing I'll mention, Justin, and also for you and Clutch, one thing that I always like to look at the perspective where we understand how this franchise is run. Miami doesn't feel the pressure. Pat Riley, Andy Ellisberg, Adam Simon, Eric Spoelstra, they don't feel the Twitter pressure of the Twitter GMs telling them what to do. They don't care. They're running an organization. They know what they're doing. Obviously, they work with their superstars. I'm not going to say this is a similar situation, but I compare it to when we drafted Shabazz Napier. This organization would have never drafted a player like that. They drafted a player like that because LeBron mentioned to them that was one of his favorite point guards. And ideally, he was going to play point guard and backing up maybe Mario Chalmers if he resigned. That was one time they worked with a superstar. I do believe it wasn't totally 100% because of Jimmy Butler, but I do believe maybe 80% was the relationship that Jimmy Butler has with Kyle Lowry. This is also a testament to when you look at a player, people like to mention this. People forget still. We still have Bam Adebayo. We still have Tyler Hero. We still have Jimmy Butler. This team is still talented. This team is still going to finish top 5 in the East. Maybe crack the top 4, maybe pushing it with the right luck also, with injuries and all that. But this is also a testament where the front office looks at Jimmy Butler. They're like, look, we gave you Kyle Lowry. You saw the decline in Kyle Lowry. Let us do what we do, and we're going to build this. Because you have to have a test where you have a relationship with your superstar, and you can kind of see already Jimmy Butler's still, quote-unquote, your most important player or your most valuable closer, but you can see the transition where this is becoming Bam's team. In a year, this is Bam's team, and it's insane to me how a year ago people were entertaining the option of moving Bam to acquire a Durant, which I don't think the organization was ever going to do. but you kind of see the growth of this. Not excusing anything. I'm not trying to cover anybody's ass in the front office. Lowry's signing was most likely a mistake long term. I'll give him credit for what he helped establish offensively for Bam, because I do recognize that. And the growth. Gabe Vincent doesn't grow as much either if Kyle Lowry's not here. So I'll grant him that, in my opinion. But there is no way, shape, or form that Kyle Lowry's a Miami Heat player next year. And I'm not going to say it won't happen, but I will say that maybe they ride this out with the injury. But I think Kyle Lowry is going to play less in the second half of the season and in the playoffs, where it's kind of an amicable, maybe stay home situation. We'll pay you. You're just taking up a roster spot. We're not going to use you. I'm not saying it's there right now, but their marriage looks like it's broken some way, somehow. There's hard feelings there, even though he did state that he wants to stay here. Jimmy Butler's one of his best friends. So I don't know. It's going to be tricky how they play. I think it's really going to come down to, and we're going to identify who the Heat signs as that one buyout pickup. If you see that they sign like a Russell Westbrook or John Wall, the writing's on the wall there, or like a Reggie Jackson, the writing's on the wall there in regards to Kyle Lowry. But if they do sign like a Terrence Ross, Will Barton, a Danny Green, then you kind of have the option like, okay, they're going to go with Kyle as a backup when he does come back. So that's going to be very telling what we do in this coming days. One thing before I forget. Right now, Lakers obviously the Lakers won the trade deadline, with the Suns being a close second, maybe 1A, 1B, around there. Do you feel that there's any team that really lost the trade deadline aside from us? A team that needed to make a move and really just made a lateral move, if anything? Clutch?
I mean, the first one that pops up to my head is Denver.
Oh, trading Bones?
Yeah, like, why?
Justin said it.
Straight up, why?
It has to be a contract situation, man.
The Pelicans didn't do anything, which is
the Pelicans acquired.
I mean, they got Jay
Richardson. Yeah.
But
they traded a point guard.
I don't get it.
You see, the Pelicans need a back to the hold on. Let me look up their roster.
While you do that,
anything surprising you?
Yeah, the biggest loser in my eyes is the Chicago Bulls. Guys, what are you doing? Seriously, you are going nowhere. You've got assets that can bring you back so much stuff, and you decide to just say, "Nah, we're good. No, we'll just figure it out in a couple months." I don't know what's in the water in Chicago right now.
No, and you know what's now that you said that, it's very true. What do you do with Vucevic? Because if you didn't trade Vucevic, unless you're going to do a sign and trade in the offseason, maybe, because you risk losing him for nothing. Because there are teams that are going to have salary cap that can just sign him outright. So that's the situation. And you said it perfectly, where you don't know if you're going to risk losing something. Or I think Toronto kind of set themselves up that they know that, like, why are we going to trade Siakam and OG? Like, they're young pieces. You can build on them. So I would be very surprised if Toronto in the offseason trades OG or Siakam. I do believe they'll trade Van Vliet. I do believe he's gone. I don't think he's going to get the contract that he wants. So he might be shipped off. But I was looking at the New Orleans, the roster. They don't really have a backup point guard right now. They just traded Graham. CJ McCollum is kind of their default point guard. But you got CJ McCollum. Alvarado. That's true. They got Alvarado. Never mind.
What about Herb Jones? Is he still not?
Herb Jones, too. That's true. Herb Jones is still there. So never mind. They'll be fine. They'll be fine. And they got, wow, man. I can't believe Bones Highland Denver actually moved him. He's a stud. He's a stud player, man. Those are the things about. And one thing I always touch up on the trade deadline. For us, it's super cool. And they brought it up yesterday with Mike Conley. It's very difficult to just uproot your family and move on one day's notice. And there's actual players that, to me, finding out that you're traded via social media must absolutely suck. Like even Mikal Bridges, where you're finished off season. And the crazy thing is the Sun played the Nets the day before the trade deadline, I believe. So you can tell negotiations were done there in person. I'm pretty sure James Jones was there. He talked to Sean Marks, another Heat alumni. We have the Heat have quite a nice executive tree around in the NBA, and they seem
That
to
was the
operate
whole
in the same way.
Norris Cole situation over again. You remember when the
Yeah.
Heat traded him and New Orleans
Huh?
was in town, so he just literally walked across the building.
Oh man! And Norris Cole, you see, that was one point guard that I loved. I love Norris Cole. He just fit his role. He did his job, and it was just at the right place at the right time. Man, he got drafted and he was a back-to-back champion. That's very few people can say that. But Clutch, I'll go to you. We're Miami natives. I'll say this before we close it up. We're in the 45-minute mark. It was a very exciting trade deadline. Obviously not for the Heat faithful, which we expected more. I'm a basketball man. I've watched basketball my whole life. I've coached it for a good 7-8 years now. I've always dreamt of being an executive, of basically building a team, which is kind of like what we're doing right now for a high school team per se. Obviously, you can't recruit players or anything like that, but you're kind of building the roster how do you want it to look. I'm happy in regards that we didn't overpay for a lateral move, which was the trend that you saw. A lot of these teams just gutted their assets, and for some improving, but some really are lateral moves that don't scare me at times. Lakers are very different animal. Phoenix, very different animal. They acquired arguably probably the best scorer ever in NBA history, best pure scorer, most talented scorer, offensive player in NBA history, most diverse for sure. LA completely revamped their roster. Now, also, it takes a little bit of time to build that chemistry. So these, it's the professional players. You still got LeBron, but don't be surprised if they hit a little snag, maybe a 2 or 3 game losing streak until they get comfortable. Miami, health-wise, is key. I'm not going to say that Omer is your main acquisition, but it does have the same effect that Oladipo had last year, where Oladipo was technically our mid-season acquisition for the long term, for the long run to close out the season. I do believe the change in Vincent starting is going to be a jolt for the lineup, just like we saw against the Pacers. I do believe that will trigger people playing in their roles. What I'm most intrigued by is the effect that Orlando Robinson is going to have. I don't think Jamal Cain is going to play too much this year, but he's a good insurance to have. So you kind of have your nucleus, even Highsmith stepping up, which is another situation now that I mentioned, and I'm going to ask you, Clutch and Justin. I'm still a big believer. I understand why they play Caleb Martin as a starting four. I'm still a big believer that this team is most efficient when Caleb Martin is the backup 3 to Jimmy Butler. Now, I do see a scenario, and I know Clutch is going to love this. I do see a scenario where Bam starts playing next to Omer, and Bam is allowed to roam around and just be a freak athlete offensively. His jumper, Omer has range. I believe they can use him similar to how they use Kelly Olynyk, how they used Myers Leonard. That's one option. Another option I'm going to throw out there to you because he's still on the roster. Do you get to the point where you maybe start Highsmith at the 4 and you switch Martin and kind of exploit his matchups off the bench? I'll go first to you, Clutch. What do you think about that? Both scenarios. You can be honest with me. I'm not going to get offended.
Well, with the Omer stuff, I mean, do I really need to say it?
No, but I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised when you see him play.
I don't think I will. But you know what? If it happens, I'll give it a chance. If it doesn't, I'll be the happiest boy alive.
Now, would you start Highsmith if he continues his play where he's a reliable 3-point shooter, he's a menace defensively? Do you start Highsmith and move Martin off the bench, or do you continue riding Martin as your starting 4?
It's another situation of what I think will happen is not the same of what I want to happen.
I got you.
So, like I said before, I speak fluent SPO.
Mm-hmm.
So I think Caleb's still going to be the power forward going forward.
Okay.
Unless the buyout market brings a power forward like Kevin Love or somebody like that.
Okay. If we sign Ibaka, would you be okay with that?
I mean, you have to see what Ibaka looks like in 2023.
Yeah.
I'd be very excited if it was 10 years ago.
Of course. It was the beginning of the stretch 4 era with Boshi, though.
Yeah, I would have loved
Those
that.
were stress fun.
But yeah, I mean, Highsmith, you said it. I wouldn't go as far as to say he's a reliable 3-point shooter, but he is a menace on defense.
Yeah, it really is,
And
man.
that's probably the more important thing, that you want him to be as close to what PJ Tucker was as
Ex-
possible.
exactly. And honestly, I talked about the change offensively, but one thing I forgot to mention, the change defensively when you have Gabe Vincent starting next to Tyler Hero. Gabe Vincent as an all-ball defender, just like Victor Oladipo, it's is not hands down one of the best I've seen. Vic, I wouldn't. Bam's not power forward. The agenda continues. Vic, I don't see Vic starting. I don't mind Vic if Vic starts with Tyler because they have good chemistry, but I prefer Vic off that 6-man role when he just comes and he blitzes that second unit. And when he comes in like with like 4 or 5 minutes left in the first quarter. So that is my preference. That's just me like trying to coach like the way Spo coaches, which I never question Spo in regards. I do question sometimes the substitution patterns, and it's driving me crazy at times what's going on in the fourth quarter when Jimmy comes in games. I understand you want to have a regimen because we do the same thing. But if there's certain games that are getting away from you, you have to push that by a minute or two and kind of extend that game and go for it. But Justin, to end the show, I want to ask you from your perspective, if that situation arises, are you comfortable? I know my man here, Clutch, Bam is not a power forward. The more I see Bam, the more I see the KG, the Sean Kemp, and he's even honestly, I will say this: I used to love KG. KG had a knockdown jumper from the wing and the top of the top of the key that was automatic. But I still see Bam Adebayo as a better defender and more athletic than all of them. So, are you comfortable, basically, allowing Bam to just free flow on offense? If your bio market just dictates that, and you maybe sign a Russell Westbrook, which also pushes the pace a little bit for that second unit.
I think it'd be a bit of a risk. If Bam isn't comfortable playing his natural position, then by all means, it's not exactly working right now to get you that top seed like last year. You may as well try something different. If that does arise, then sure, why not? Just experiment a little bit.
You see, I like Justin. You see, Clutch, you got to be a little more open-minded.
But I'm gonna get my first take on here because I get wanting to switch things up, but why switch things up with the most efficient player on the team doing what he's doing at that position?
Yeah, but he's still technically gonna be at that position, but he's free to roam a little bit more.
No, he's not. That's not the
what?
same position. It's not going to be the same position.
Well, I mean, if you look at it from a perspective of, do you remember when Bam played with Myers and Kelly? Defensively, yes. right now, defenses. Well, you can still say with Caleb Martin because Caleb Martin is a 3-point threat, so it does open up the floor either way. So no matter what, the only thing I don't want to do is clog the paint for Bam, because Bam is comfortable. Just the fact that he's knocking these jumpers down consistently, that opens up the lanes for him and for other people. Because before, that used to piss me off so much. And I remember I told Bobby, it's the first, like, I think it was Bam's second year. I'm like, Bob, you're going to see the growth of Bam when he actually turns around and looks at the basket. Now, he's a killer, bro. People questioned last year his killer instinct. What can he do? He's not really an offensive a weapon. And I'm like, dude, Bam's from the moment he came into the NBA, his shot has always been fluid. The problem is he wouldn't shoot it, and I never understood why. He has range. I'm pretty sure you might see him shoot maybe 1 or 2 3-pointers a game if needed. But if he's hitting that range consistently, I have no problem. And which just me to another situation. Have you guys noticed the adjustment? And Clutch, you've seen it in person or firsthand. Have you noticed the Heat's adjustment where they're shooting more long twos and mid-range jumper than other teams in the NBA because they're such a bad 3-point shooting team this year?
Yeah, I think they kind of said, if something's not working, screw it. Let's just step in a little bit.
I love that. I got no problem with that. I have no issue with that because you're playing to your strengths. Now, Robinson was playing pretty decent before he got hurt. I'm not saying he can't rekindle that fire. And Strus as well. Strus has been in a slump, but he's kind of improving. And Gabe is a solid knockdown shooter. Gabe's numbers are his percentages are higher. Sorry, pardon me, than Kyle, right? Gabe's percentages, his 3-point percentage and his field goal percentage is higher
I
than
mean,
Kyle's.
Kyle is shooting a terrible percentage, so I wouldn't be surprised.
Dude, what was Kyle shooting? Like 20-something% from three, or like low 30?
Something, or I think low 30, but
Jesus
like
Christ, man.
over the last few months, I think he was shooting close to low 20.
Low 20s, yeah. Bro, it's insane. I mean, we knew it wasn't going to age well, but we didn't know it was going to be this quick, honestly. And like I said, the personal side, I'm intrigued to know what happened. I've never asked. I don't care to indulge in that, but there has to be something very personal that affected him last year. Because honestly, the window with Kyle was 2 years, and this is already the second year, and we're gone. So we'll see. We'll see what we do. But either way, it wasn't as exciting and climatic as we wanted for Heat fans. But the trade season came and went. Now we just await the buyout market. I wouldn't be surprised if we have some names tomorrow that reach a buyout agreement, and we were a little surprised by it, and it could be influential for us. So we'll see. But Justin, my man on the West Coast, enjoy the Lakers move. Enjoy the newfound excitement for which, like I tell you, I'm as a fan, as a basketball fan, I applaud what Rob Pelinka did, because not only did he get better this year, but he has, I believe all the players that he acquired are 26 and younger. So he can still use those pieces to build with Davis, part of a nucleus when you rebuild after LeBron leaves or retires. So my applaud to him. Rob, you did a great job. Justin, any final takes for that, man?
Yes, being that this is a Heat show, I'd like to roast Celtics fan Bill Simmons right here, because I kept receipts, Bill. He said on March 30th, 2021, if I was a Rockets fan, I would be outraged. This could have been Ben Simmons. They could have had a real guy who was a top 25 guy that can be the best or second best player on a perennial contender. If I was a Houston Rockets fan, I'd be effing outraged that I could have had Simmons, Maxey, and a couple firsts versus the sandwich that I got. Also, then he didn't stop there. On May 12th, 2021, he tweeted out an article about Rockets owner Tillman Fertitta excited about the future. He says, "This is hilarious. What they got back from Harden trade was historically, comically, unfathomably bad, and this dude is excited. Well, who's laughing now? 4 lottery picked first-round picks coming our way."
Oh man, Justin, you heard it from there. Clutch, which I'm Brooklyn. I'm happy if Cam Thomas was performing. Simmons, they try to move him, but Simmons might flourish with Thomas a little bit, but I don't think he's rebuilding that value ever again. Clutch, like always, our tradition. I'll close it out with you. Any final words before we go, my man?
No, man. I guess I'll just be happy that Dedmon's gone.
That's we talked about this, and we said that a successful midseason trade would get rid of Dedmon and trading Duncan Robinson. We couldn't do the latter, so sometimes the best move is the move you don't make. We'll take that approach. I understand Twitter wanted to move, but guys, remember, Pat Riley's not asleep. Andy Ellisberg is not asleep. This organization knows what it's doing. Are there going to be mistakes made? Absolutely. Now you have to find a way to ratify the mistake, to correct that. And that's what we're going to looking forward. So I look forward to the second season where we play injury-free to the most part. We play to our strengths. Gabe Vincent steps up. If Kyle plays and he accepts his new role, by all means. And I'm just excited to see who we have by next Wednesday's show. So next Wednesday we should be live at 8 p.m. back to our regular time. For my man Justin from the West, Clutch from the East, yours truly, Alex. Thank you so much from the Fins Talk Sports Network, your Fast and Fast break. And I believe if they haven't started already, Huddle Up and Wish should be starting soon. So don't forget to check them out. And Super Bowl this Sunday. Everybody enjoy your Super Bowl. Enjoy your commercials. Much love like always, Miami. Stay safe.